Hello, I'm Luke Laurie, one of the designers of the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, soon to be published by Minion Games. I co-designed the game with veteran designer Tom Jolly, famous for such titles as Wiz War, Drakon, Cave Troll, and Disc Wars. The Manhattan Project Energy Empire is a standalone game, not an expansion, though it was inspired by and heavily influenced by the original Manhattan Project designed by Brandon Tibbetts. In this video, I will give you a tour of the game and a short overview so that you can see all that Energy Empire has to offer. In the original Manhattan Project, nations are ramping up their scientific and industrial production in a race to build nuclear weapons during World War II. Energy Empire takes place in the decades that followed, in a time of rapid industrialization and massive increases in energy production, fueled by nuclear power and burning petroleum. The major threat in Energy Empire isn't war, but uncertain global impacts that result from pollution. Each player has a player mat with a grid that represents their environment. They have rows for air, forest, and ocean, and they score victory points at the end of the game for this grid. Also, periodically throughout the game, rows of the environment are scored, each space counting for 1 victory point. As pollution tokens are acquired during the game, they're removed from the global impact track and then placed into the environment. I'm using prototype components for this demonstration. There is no final art or graphic design in what you are seeing here. In addition, I'm using prototype versions of the custom dice, which will be a stretch goal for the Energy Empire Kickstarter. Hopefully, your final copy of this game will include dice like these, though Energy Empire plays just fine with standard dice. These are the energy dice: brown for petroleum, green for solar wind, blue for hydro geo, black for coal, and yellow for nuclear. These are pollution tokens. One side represents nuclear contamination, the other side is more traditional pollution. These cubes represent the steel resource. These blue discs represent science. These brown cubes are representing oil. These pink cubes representing plastic. This is money. These are oil wells, two-sided. They either go in the ocean or on land. And, of course, these are workers. These are energy. Up here we have the global impact track, and you'll see that starting out on the track are a number of pollution tokens equal to the number of players in the game plus 2. We have the price of oil is indicated on the track, so depending on how many pollution tokens have been removed, as you move down the track, the price of oil will rise. The global impact track is also used to trigger global impact cards, which are laid out at the top of the board in order at the start of the game. When a stack of tokens is empty, we will trigger the global impact card. On the left side of the board, we have the industry sector, or industry section. We have the market where you can acquire industry cards. We call it industrialization. We have the mine where you can get steel. We have oil drilling where you can place tokens, oil well tokens, into your environment. And you can also, at the same time, gain 3 oil. This is chemistry, where you can turn oil into plastic, science, but you're also going to gain a pollution at the same time. The bottom of the industry section is where we have how you acquire power plants, and it's different resources, different combinations of resources, depending on the dice that you're trying to acquire. Over here we have the commerce section of the board. So you have the private enterprise, where you can acquire the cards from the commerce market. We have the finance space, where you can gain money. You can buy and sell oil. You can trade resources. At the bottom, this is the United Nations track. This is not actually part of the commerce section of the board, but this is a location of the track. And you rise up or climb up the United Nations track by using your nation card. And it's an important way of earning some victory points in the game. And then on the right side, we have the government area of the board. At the top, we have the public services, where you can acquire cards from the government market. We have scientific research, where you can gain science and take a peek at global impact cards. We have the education space, where you can gain more workers. And the cleanup space, where you can spend science to remove pollution from your environment. To begin a game of Energy Empire, each player starts with 3 workers, 2 energy, 1 pollution in the air, and each player gets 2 achievement tokens and 2 nations. But you're going to choose just one of the nations to keep and one of the achievement tokens to keep. Nations are important because they tell you what your starting resources are going to be. They also give you a special power that's unique for each nation. This power allows you to advance on the United Nations track, which is an important source of victory points representing your power in the world. So you can see the United States gives you 3 bonus oil, 1 science, 2 dollars or money. In order to advance in the United Nations track, this player would have to spend 1 oil and 2 money to move up 1 space. If I instead chose India, I would get a bonus starting worker, 1 plastic, 1 oil, and to advance on the global impact track, it would require placing a worker or energy, spending the oil, spending the plastic, and I could move up 1 space. For fun, I'm going to choose India, and I will choose Healthy Forests. This will give me 1 bonus victory point for each clean space of my forest. Now my forest already scores victory points, so this is a double benefit if I can be very successful at keeping my forest clean. But if I fail to keep my forest clean, it will be doubly painful. The nation card that I didn't choose, I just turn it over and it becomes a player reference that I can use the rest of the game. There are 10 nations included, so that means that each player is dealt 2 different nations in a 5-player game. Plenty of diversity and plenty of replayability built into that starting mechanic. On your turn, you have 2 choices. You can work or generate. I can take one of my workers and place that worker on the mine, activating the mine immediately, gaining 1 steel resource and placing that on my player mat. Then, immediately following that, I'm allowed to use any of the structures that I already have in my tableau. So for example, right now I have a small plastics factory and recycling center. I can use workers or energy to activate these, 1 each in this case. So if I place an energy here, I will immediately gain 1 plastic, placing that on my player mat, and I could use a worker or an energy to activate the recycling center. In this case, I would need to spend that plastic, returning that to the supply, and then I would gain the benefit of being able to remove 1 pollution from my environment. So the basic idea is a work turn is play on the main board and then use your tableau, using only the structures that match the area of the main board in which you played. If the space you want to use on the main board is occupied, you are allowed to use it, but in order to do so, you're going to have to place energy with your worker. You need to place enough energy so that you will have a taller stack than the player who's currently in that space. So if the yellow player wants to come along and use the mine later, they have to place at least 1 energy and then their worker so that they have the taller stack. Then they are allowed to mine. Whenever you place on the main board, you can place your worker with any amount of energy. If there's no one there, you don't have to place any energy with your worker, but you always have the option to. Another player coming in and using the same space will have to place at least 1 energy with their worker. And they can use the space as long as they make their stack taller with 1 worker and any number of energy. Later on, even that same player, the yellow player in this instance, can come back and use the same space with making their stack taller still. So here we have 2 energy and 1 worker for the yellow player. There's really no limit to the number of players who can use a space as long as they keep coming back with sufficient energy. Eventually, you'll decide that it's no longer beneficial for you to take a work turn, and instead you'll choose to generate. Generate is how you reset and generate more energy. So what's going to happen is, step one is you get to claim an achievement. Achievement tokens are acquired throughout the game, and they represent your own ability to craft your own personal objectives. For example, in this situation, I have a leftover worker and a leftover energy. As long as I have at least two workers and or energy remaining, I'm able to claim an achievement. But let's say I take the Steel Empire. I take it, add it to my player mat, turn it face down. Step two is I return my workers to my player board. All my workers go back onto my player board, and then I have to discard all of my energy. I no longer have energy, and if I want to have more energy, I'm going to have to generate energy. I can spend some oil, and I can trade in, say, 2 oil to temporarily acquire 2 petroleum dice. In this situation, I rolled a 3 and a 4 with my petroleum dice. The lightning bolts show me how many energy I produced, so I get to take 4 energy tokens from the supply of my own personal player color, and I get to add those to my player mat. The number on the dice determines which of the dice is going to pollute. So you take a look at which one has the highest number. In this case, it's the 4, and I see a little cloud which indicates that I am going to pollute my environment. Put this one in my air. In this example, the player would produce 6 energy because of the 6 lightning bolts total on the dice. The highest die roll is a 6, and that's on the nuclear die, which is on the left. Consequently, this player would be receiving 1 nuclear contamination token in their environment. This player would produce 5 energy because of the 5 total lightning bolts. But there would be no pollution produced because the highest die roll is the green die, which has no indication of any kind of pollution. A pollution token is still removed from the track, though, to keep the game going. So to start, what I have is I have 2 players set up. I have the red player here and the yellow player. The red player's starting nation is the nation of India, and so this player has 1 extra worker, extra plastic, and extra oil. Those resources have already been placed on the player mat, and every player starts with 1 pollution token in their air. The starting achievement for this player is the Healthy Forests, and the other player is being West Germany. Now, West Germany actually starts with a black coal die, which I have here. This is the custom die for the Kickstarter stretch goal. 1 oil and 2 steel. Those resources have been placed on the player mat. And this player's achievement token is Healthy Ocean. The first player was determined to be the red player. The yellow player consequently gets 1 bonus money. And if there had been a third player, that third player would have received 2 bonus money, and so on. Play starts with a red player. The red player needs to work and start to get some things done. So we're going to have the red player make use of the plastic, and the red player will start by going to Private Enterprise. Private Enterprise is the board location that allows a player to make use of the commerce market. In the commerce market, there are 3 cards. They are face up, and you can see what they do. The player can't use any of these cards until they've been acquired. The costs to purchase to gain these cards are across the top. 2 money or 1 plastic for this card, 3 money or 1 plastic for this card, 4 money or 2 plastic for this card. The costs in the government and industry are very similar. But over here in government, it's money or science, and over here in industry, it's money or steel. So, our red player decides to spend 1 plastic and take the stock market. The stock market is a commerce card, and its ability is that if you activate it, the player will gain $3 or 3 money, and every other player at the table will gain 1. At the end of the game, this card is worth 2 victory points, and because there's nothing over in this corner, it means that this card does not cause pollution when you gain it. So, red player adds that card to his or her tableau, and then because it is a commerce card, and this player played in the commerce area of the board, this card can be used immediately. So, using a worker or an energy, the red player can trigger it. So the red player takes one of his workers. Remember, this is India. India gets an extra worker, and that allows that player to gain 3 money. Meanwhile, the yellow player will be gaining 1 money from the same action. Now, I neglected to slide these cards down because immediately when a card is purchased, we slide these cards over to the left and we draw a new card from the top of the commerce deck and we add it in there. So what happens is the longer the cards are out here, they're going to become cheaper, and then new cards are going to keep coming in. So we always will have 3 commerce cards here, 3 industry cards here, 3 government cards here. This works very similarly to the original Manhattan Project, but divided into 3 separate markets. Now the yellow player has pretty different options at the beginning. With 2 steel, 1 oil, 1 coal die, yellow's already in a position to be able to generate some energy when the time comes. So this player is going to go get to work and make use of some of the steel. Have some money too. So we'll go over here to industrialization and we'll purchase one of the buildings up here. Let's go ahead and take this railroad, and it's going to cost us either 2 money or 1 steel. We could pay either way, but let's go ahead and pay with the steel since we have 2. And I'll show you the card. So the railroad uses 1 worker energy to activate, will generate 1 steel or 1 oil, and will reward the player with 4 victory points at the end of the game. But the long-term cost is also that I'm going to be putting 1 pollution in my air, or a yellow player will be. So we'll place this down here in the tableau. We'll take a pollution token from the global impact track, and we have to put it in the air. Now there are ways to remove that later, but we'll see. It's possible though we'll be too busy being productive that we may end up just with some dirty air. So we slide the cards down and we feed in a new industry card. And so the market is refreshed. And again, because we played in the industry section of the board, we can use this industry structure. So we'll go ahead and place 1 worker here, and I can gain either a steel or an oil, and let's gain a steel. Let's go ahead and we will move over to the government part of the board. We'll pick up a science lab. That might be handy for us. So we'll place this down in our tableau. And I'm running out of space. I'm trying to fit all of this into the camera view, but we would make a little more room. So if I take my science lab now, and in order to acquire it, I would have to pay $2 because I could pay either $2, 2 money, or 1 science, and I don't have any science. So spend the 2 money, acquire the science lab, and we can activate the science lab right away. Now, this structure is worth 3 victory points at the end of the game, and it gives us 1 science resource. It also allows us a peek at one of the global impact cards. This one is special because I can use it twice, but that's on 2 different work turns. So, now that this is in my tableau, I can take 1 energy, for example. I can acquire science resource, and I can take a look at a global impact card. So I can take a look at what will be coming soon. Now's the time when I'll explain the global impact card. Global impact card has 3 effects on it. The first is this indicates which row of the environment will be scored for all players. That means forests are going to be scored next. So when this card is triggered, we'll flip it over and every player will gain victory points for every empty space on their forest row. Secondly, over here, this indicates which of the 3 card markets is going to be reset. That is, we're going to remove all those cards and bring in new ones. This isn't happening now, this has happened when this card is triggered. Oh, by the way, I forgot to slide these down and bring in another one. There we go. So, then each global impact card has a special effect. In the early part of the game, the early global impact cards are primarily positive, whereas in the late global impact, things can get ugly. We have an oil boom. Each player may drill for oil as if they were using the oil drilling location. So when this one comes up, we are all going to get that option. So the yellow player is going to be going to the power plant space, and using 1 steel, the yellow player is going to get the precious blue die. You can only get 1 blue die, and it represents hydroelectric geothermal power. So we place that here. We've paid 1 steel for it, but special to this die is we do need to take a pollution and place it in our forest. So take a pollution token, place it in the forest. I could place it anywhere in the forest, and you might be wondering why I wouldn't place it anywhere, and I'll show you a couple things to consider. These 4 spaces of the player mat in the bottom left-hand corner each have an oil drop on them. That means these are spaces that are available for placing oil well tokens. These are the only spaces I've got. This allows me to drill for oil and gain oil using the oil drilling space. The spaces that are on the right side, they all have a bonus on the top. These are a column bonus. Now they make no difference during the game, but at the very end of the game, if the third column is clear of pollution or other tokens, this player gets 1 bonus victory point. If the 4th column is clear, the player gets 2 bonus victory points. And if the 5th column is clear, it's 3 bonus victory points. So generally, players will place their pollution tokens from left to right. But once in a while, you might want to leave one of these spaces empty so that you have the option to drill for oil. I'm going to go ahead and pollute my forest. Now I've acquired my blue die, and I could make use of any of my cards, any of my industry cards that I have in my tableau, but I've already used my railroad, so my turn is not over. I have the right resources to go up the United Nations track. So what I can do is I can play one of my energy tokens on my nation card. I spend my oil and my steel, return those to the supply, and the yellow player gets to move up the United Nations track. This first space is worth 4 victory points. The second one is worth 8. Third is 12. Fourth is 15. And the 5th is 17 victory points. Plus, whoever is in the lead on the track at the end of the game gets the leader bonus of 3 victory points. So, if things stay the way they are right now, at the end of the game, I would have 7 victory points for my position, and red would have 0. So there is a little bit of racing that's going to go on with this United Nations track, and the last position on the track can only be occupied by 1 player. Yellow is in the lead on Climb the United Nations track. Going back to the red player, India, decides that this is a good time to generate. Having 2 more pieces remaining on the player mat does allow the red player to claim 1 of the achievement tokens. The red player is going for cultural heritage. This is the achievement that will allow us to get victory points for every government structure we have at the end of the game to a maximum of 5 points. And we already have 1, so we're on the right track. So we take the achievement token, place it on the player mat, and we can claim that because we have 2 things left on our player mat. We draw a new achievement token to replace the one we took, and then we're allowed to pull everything back and generate. So workers come back, and energy is discarded. Now that we have no energy, we need to generate energy, and the only option to do that would be to burn oil. Now I could choose to roll no dice and not generate any energy and just use my workforce. But if I do, I won't pollute, I won't have any energy. I still would remove one token and discard it from the global impact track because this is our timeline for the game. So I don't want to do that though. I want to burn some oil and get some energy because energy gives us more choices and lets us get more done. So we roll the brown die and the result is a 5, and it's going to generate 2 energy, and we're also going to get 1 pollution. I'm getting 2 energy and 1 pollution has to go in my environment. I take it from the track. I get to decide where it goes. Now, if I remember correctly, we're going to score forests because we use the science lab to check. So I'm going to go ahead and put this pollution in my ocean. Red has completed a generation, and now we come back to yellow, and yellow has no choice but to generate. Yellow does not have any workers left, and to do a work turn, you must place on the main board first, then you can use your cards in your tableau. Not an option. Yellow doesn't have any oil to burn, so yellow's going to be going with just the energy dice they have. So we're going to discard energy. We're going to return our workers to the mat, and we're going to roll the energy dice. Okay, great. Perfect example. We have 2 5s came up. Now, that means that our 2 dice are tied. They both are going to produce 2 energy, so I'm going to get a total of 4 energy. And you'll notice that there's no pollution symbol on the blue die, but there is a pollution symbol on the black die. Because they tied, I get to choose which pollution I'm going to take. So in this case, I'm definitely going with the blue die. I'm not going to cause any pollution, and I gain 4 energy. So by having a diverse energy economy, I can hedge my bets and hopefully avoid more pollution than I want. So 4 energy. I didn't pollute, but I still need to remove a pollution from the track. Now we've revealed the symbol that indicates that the first global impact card is going to take effect. So those things I looked at previously, wasn't the yellow player, it's the red player, are now going to happen. So we are going to score the forests first. Looking down at the yellow player, that means the yellow player is going to get 4 victory points. Looking down at the red player gets 5 victory points. In this situation, the red player knew a little more and was able to make a slightly better choice. Now we're going to be resetting our government buildings based on that symbol there. So we take these structures and we discard them and we grab 3 more and we fill that market back up. Then the last thing is the option that's available for everyone. Each player may drill for oil as if they were using the oil drilling location. The oil drilling location simply means that you're going to take an oil well, place it in your environment, and if you do, you gain 3 oil tokens or oil cubes. So in this case, yellow is going to decide to go ahead and do it. They will drill for oil in their ocean. They take 3 oil. And red will also do it too. They'll drill on land and they gain 3 oil as well. Later in the game, when a global impact card is triggered, it may have negative effects. The late global impacts can be dangerous. So, when we remove the last token on one of these 3 spaces, we'll take a late global impact card, and, as usual, we'll score one of the rows of the environment. In this case, it would be oceans, and it looks like the yellow player would get 4 victory points out of that. The red player would get 5. We would reset the industry cards by that symbol But then look at this effect, the nuclear disaster. Each player chooses 3 pollution tokens in their environment and turns them over to become nuclear contamination. Oh no! The red player only has 1 token. They were prepared for this. They turn that 1 token over, it becomes nuclear contamination. The yellow player, on the other hand, this pollution that was just like smog before, they now have to turn over 3 of these to become nuclear contamination. Twice as hard to remove from the environment. The game continues until the last token is removed from the global impact track. At that point, the very last global impact card would be triggered. You'd carry out the effects. And the player who caused this to happen, the player who took that token off, they are going to be the last player in the game. But you play one more time around. That means that if it was the red player that triggered it, the yellow player would get one more turn. Play would go back to the red player. The red player gets the last turn in the game. If you gain pollution after the global impact track is empty, you just take the pollution from the supply to put it in your environment. So you can see, as the game continues, your ability to acquire resources and manipulate your board presence can increase in different areas depending on how you work. You'll acquire more and varied dice. Yellow dice, the nuclear dice, allow you to produce the most energy. Green dice, they are guaranteed to be clean energy every time, but they don't generate as much energy. You'll be able to acquire more science, more steel, more plastic, and most of all, you're going to be able to build up the tableau of cards that's going to allow you to build these custom engines to work towards your goals, whether it be acquiring the dice or activating your nations to move up the United Nations track, or it may be to keep your environment clean. Different combinations of these things will have different rewards in the game. Okay, now we're imagining this is the end of the game, and we're going to take a look at the red player's final score. The red player may have acquired some victory points during the game. That is, they would have acquired victory points each time the global impact cards came up from their environment rows. But they may have also acquired victory points from other things, such as using various structures in the game and so on. So let's take a look at the different things that get scored. First of all, dice. Every energy die that the player has acquired, these are the permanent dice, not the petroleum dice, is worth 2 victory points. So this player has 6 points from dice, 2 each. Then we can look at the environment here, and we count up all of these spaces that are clean in the environment. So we have 4 plus 3 plus 2. So we have 9 victory points from those spaces. Then we look at the columns, and we see out of these 3 columns on the right, which ones are clean entirely. This one is not, so we don't earn this column bonus. But there's going to be this 2-point column bonus, this is earned, and this 3-point column bonus, that one's earned. For the cards, we get the victory points on each of the cards. All of that goes into the score. And for the United Nations track, depending on the position, we get points for that. So in this case, it's 12 victory points for the red player, plus the red player is the leader bonus. The red player is going to get 15 total victory points from position on the United Nations track. Then comes the hidden scoring. Throughout the game, achievement tokens have been acquired. In this case, the player has the commercial empire, which is 1 victory point for each commerce structure. Well, in this case, that's only 1 victory point for that token. This token is cultural heritage, which is 1 victory point for each government structure. All 4 of these structures are government structures, so 4 victory points for those. This one is also cultural heritage. There are 2 copies of each token in the game. So if you can acquire 2 of them and fulfill it, that's twice as good for you. In this case, this player gets 4 points, 4 points, plus 1 point, and then the healthy forests, which we partially managed to succeed in, 3 more victory points for the healthy forests. So, endgame victory points are all figured out on the track, and then we determine the winner. The winner is the one who is the ruler of their energy empire. So that's my overview of the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, coming to you soon from Minion Games. I hope that you found this video informative. I apologize if I misspoke or made any errors along the way. I'm sure I left out some key details, but I hope it gave you a feel for what the game is like and the possibilities it offers. I hope that you'll find that this game has very diverse possibilities for strategies. There's definitely not one path to victory, and you can play the game many times and keep exploring different ways of being successful, different paths to building your energy empire. Thank you.